Okay, so it should be recording now.
Okay.
Hi everyone. I'm Alison Hollingshead. I'm a counsellor and psychotherapist, and I just realised, are we sharing a screen? Will that work? Do we need to be looking and having a different view? There we go. That might look better
It is.
as a recording. There it is. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm Alison. I'm the counsellor and psychotherapist who runs the Self-Belief Project, and we are talking tonight about body autonomy, boundaries and respect. And I've got Katrina Johnson here with me, who's a counsellor, and I'll let you introduce yourself, Katrina, to the
Hi.
group.
Hi, Alison. Thanks very much for having me. I am really looking forward to talking to you. So, I work with children and young people. I have done for quite a long time, working in various different roles, and always around that sort of empowering them and around their confidence, around to talk about their body, about respect, even self-esteem. And I work in private practice as well, supporting children, young people and adults as well, 13 and up. So love
What's
it.
the main kind of thing that children come to you about? What's the main issue?
I mean, it can be a mixture of things. They may have already have experienced some inappropriate contact or abuse themselves. So quite often maybe parents are quite anxious about that, and it's really just about that kind of setting boundaries, Alison, just so that they can have a think, and so that they're not feeling nervous in the future. And I think the important thing when I'm working with parents or children is that they have that understanding that it's not their fault, and you sort of write that, put that in your page quite a lot. They're not to blame. This is not about making them feel that this was their responsibility, or it's their responsibility to keep themselves safe. It's simply about giving them some tools to set boundaries and to make choices about their body, really.
Yeah. And I think it's
Yeah,
really empowering, isn't it, for young children to
yeah,
feel confident in their body and to feel like they can say, this is my boundary, this is what's okay for me, and this is what's not okay for
yeah.
me, and to have their mummies and daddies support that for them as well.
Yeah, for sure, and I think it does. It just brings up a lot of anxiety. People don't really know how to pitch it, or what kind of age you need to be starting. And there's a real fear around saying the wrong thing, I
Mm.
think. But this is a real life skill. That's what I normally say to parents. A bit like learning how to tie your lace, or toileting or eating. It's from a very early age. It's about their body, it's their rules, it's they're the boss of their body, not the boss of the house. So it's been it's been really careful with that this is not about them getting to say no to brushing teeth, or um
Yeah, it's
going to
like
bed,
the
or
health is paramount, isn't it? It's important that they brush the teeth, and that if there's any medical
yeah,
problems that they're attended to, or any kind of,
yeah.
any health.
Holding someone's hand, mummy and daddy's hand going across the road. Okay, that's touch, but it's about safety and taking
Yeah.
care of them. So yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I've got a few questions. So if I
Okay.
fire away, so
Yes.
what age should we be starting to talk about boundaries? You mentioned it just then. What age?
Yeah, I mean, I've got two wee boys. I think, if that's okay to say, and I kind of, I'm a parent, so I really get it that it's hard, and I think it's different when I'm working with. I find it easier sometimes with with other people's children and supporting them. So I get it, it's difficult, but I would kind of say as early as possible, Alison.
Yeah.
Really kind of almost toddler age, where you can really start to bring in those family, instill those values from the very offset of very basic things, of just asking them, is it okay if, if I, whether it's if I give you a hug, or is it okay if mummy gives you a kiss, or and it's not saying that you've not to kiss and hug your children, but it's just about wording it in a way where they understand that they can say no.
Yeah. And I think offering
got the choice
as well, isn't it? Like if you kind of get over enthusiastic relatives sometimes, they go on, give us a hug, and it's lovely that people want to hug each other, but sometimes it's important for the child to know that they can choose to hug, or they can choose to give a high five, or they can just choose to wave if they want to.
Well, that's it. They get to set their own boundaries. So as much as it's, you know, they're your child, they're still not your property. They've got to decide that. And I think, like you said, it can be a bit embarrassing sometimes. I've got quite a, well, if I'm going to say painfully shy, that maybe sounds quite negative, but I've got one very tactile child, one very shy child who does not want to be touched, he does not want to be kissed, he does not want to speak when he's out. And I sort of say to him, it's okay, that's all right. And even though we might get a bit of a look of, oh, so he's not going to give me a kiss, I'll say that's okay, that's okay. And it's just giving the message that, because if you're starting to push them over, even if it's going to get the nice perfect photo with Santa at Christmas or something, you know, if they don't want to sit on his lap, then it's all right. It's about, because if you're forcing them to do that, you're giving them the message that unwanted contact is acceptable.
And that someone can force something upon you and that you have to do as you're told. And I remember Santa came round the street here, and everyone in the street was saying, come on. I think Lila was probably 2 at the time, 2.5, and they were saying, come on, give Santa a hug. And I was standing there saying, no, she doesn't want to, she's crying. You know, I thought she doesn't want to. So I think you have to kind of listen to them and what they're saying, and then support them as well, because
and I really like what you were saying there. It's almost like, do you want to give a high five instead? And even if they say no, it's like, actually it's really, it's fine to do that, but it's no matter what, isn't it, that it's about them deciding. And then soon family and friends will catch up as well. If you start regularly setting that boundary, that sort of healthy boundary, they'll catch up, and they'll get to understand that they need to also ask as well. And it's really important then for children then growing up, going to school, because then they'll start to ask. My other son is very tactile, and we have had a few notes in the bag, Rory apologising, you know, just saying, I'm really sorry that I gave you that hug, but it's just because I really like you, but I know that I didn't ask your proper permission. You know, so I think he was about 6 at the time. So it's very much a conversation, just keeping it really, really
it's
open.
both ways, isn't it, to know that you respect someone else's boundaries and they respect yours, and that's okay to say no, or I'm uncomfortable with this, or I don't want to.
It's just giving that message, whether it's they're sitting next to each other at, you know, lunchtime, or sharing, or what movie are we going to pick. I just think it's something that if you're doing that, it's not just about your body, it's almost just about the other things that then when they're young people and they're in maybe more intimate relationships, then they will know what feels right for them. And a bit when you were saying there about crying there, it's getting them to understand, how will you know that you're uncomfortable, how that your body's uncomfortable, that you don't feel okay? How are you going to know when your boundaries sort of, you're crossed, or your body boundary, or body invisible cloak, or invisible line, or whatever you want to?
Does it feel funny in your tummy, or does it make you want to cry, or do you feel like you want to run away, or what
panicky? Just so that they're really clear then, that they're kind of alerted to that, and then they can alert you that doesn't feel okay. Somehow.
Well, my next question was going to be about how do we communicate healthy boundaries. We've covered a little bit there, haven't we? I was just trying to think, is there anything that we haven't said about healthy boundaries, and how do we communicate that, or help them communicate that?
I mean, sometimes did we say about language? I can't even remember there, in terms of or is that another question, Alison? I'm probably skipping
The
it.
next question about anatomically correct
Right,
language,
okay.
and do we use that?
I was going to almost say there that sometimes what I've done with children is got them, might sound like a bit silly, but I think it's good to keep it fun, is get them to step inside a hula hoop, or it gets them sort of familiar with the space around them, about how much space feels comfortable. And sometimes I kind of walk towards them and get them to put their hand up when it's too close and say stop, so that they just get the feeling of when their personal space feels breached, if you like, when it feels encroached, or when it just feels like it's too close. And everyone's they're going to be a bit different with that, but almost just I guess just so they're getting used to what feels okay. And there's lots of books around, I'm sort of looking at ones now I've got there, no means no, let's talk about body. There's loads of books out there, wonderful books that are really explain sort of consent and everything really well.
Yeah, and really great to read those sort of books with your children, because I think when you read with your child and you tell it through a story, they can really understand it like so much better than when, I've tried with my little one to talk to her about stuff. She's like, she hears it, but she really hears it, and she really gets into it with the stories. No means no, we've got that, and it's a great
it's a good book. Yeah.
So how about language then? What kind of language should we be using when we talk about our body? Is it important to use anatomically correct language? I can barely say it.
I know it is it's a bit of a mouthful. I'm not even going to try. I think this is a really important thing, because I do work with adults as well who are survivors. One of the things that they often might talk about is almost that they just didn't have the language. And it's not, and again, it's not placing any responsibility on them or their parents, but almost that because I think you mentioned it the other day on your page last week or something, that if we're not speaking about body parts in general, if it's made to feel like it's a dirty thing or an embarrassing thing, then children are not actually, firstly, not going to want to sort of mention that something's going on there, that there's maybe been inappropriate touch or something that doesn't feel okay, if they're not actually using the words, and if it's not actually the done thing to speak about it in the house, if that family value isn't there. So yes, I think the language of, so both my boys will use the word penis, because there's so many different words that how would we know? So sometimes we could it could be lost, particularly if they say it to a few different people, because often I would sort of talk to children about who their support network is, so get them to think of 5 people, maybe draw around their hand and put 5 different people. Now if you're going to all these different people and they say something about, I think you'd said touching a flower, that might be missed by the 4th person along that doesn't understand that language and what that means. So it could really be missed, and obviously other medical things might be missed as well, if something isn't quite.
And I think there's a slight embarrassment, isn't there, around calling our body parts by their real name. My 3-year-old will confidently say vulva, and that's not something I could do when I was younger. I don't think I even knew what it was called, and that's like a part of me that functions every day, that and I think having reducing that embarrassment and anxiety around your private parts helps you later on when you're entering into healthy relationships or relationships with other people, that you can talk about it. And
definitely. And I know from working with sort of the 12 plus, when I was doing sort of sexual health groups in high schools, I was really quite shocked actually that the level of well, actually, I learned a thing or two myself because I didn't know half what they were talking about because of the names. I was like, oh, what is that? But actually, they didn't know the correct names. They did not know, and actually, there was a lot of embarrassment. Like, I can't be calling it penis. I can't be. I would. Everyone would laugh at me. Like, there was a real thing of that's not okay. But I think the correct universal terms that everyone knows keeps people really sort of safe, and it can be a deterrent as well, in terms of if any perpetrator is noticing that they're using specific language, that they are clued up, that they're empowered, that they have a voice. It's not 100% guarantee, of course it's not, but it's letting children and young people feel that they've got a bit of power.
It's about empowering children, isn't it, and empowering them through their childhood to adulthood, so that they feel confident about their bodies, themselves, their boundaries, and what feels okay, what feels comfortable, and what doesn't feel comfortable for them, and that they can ask for that or say no to that.
Yeah, for sure. And if it doesn't feel okay, then they can let somebody know about it. And I was going to say as well, depending on the sort of level of ability of a child, whether they're a toddler or whether they have a learning sort of needs, or that actually non-verbal children can still be doing that. That's still appropriate. You can be doing blank bodies and putting different parts on, so they still could point to the area. They could get the body out and show you, and so that you can still be using that language. So it's inclusive of all children.
I like what you said when we spoke the other day about talking about different people in a child's life and what feels appropriate to them, and drawing a diagram of them maybe meeting the postman or the doctor or their aunt.
Yes, Rainbow Road, that's
Rainbow Road. That's something that you created.
Well, I can't take the credit for it, but it was somebody, one of my colleagues had done it, and it was actually to work with people with additional support needs, because it was a way to try and make it really visual, but actually it could be really used for a lot younger children. So Rainbow Road, so it's almost like, I think the character was Sophie, and she had a really, really busy day. She was going to buy milk, and she had various things to do in her day, and you could draw like a little rainbow road. You could make it into sort of a bit of a game, draw lots of shops in it, and the doctors, and then draw different characters. So she meets the postman, and then have different sort of a handshake sign, or a kiss sign, or blow a kiss, or a high five, and it's talking to him, but Sophie's met the postman, what would be okay, what would be an appropriate way, and obviously it's trying to explain what inappropriate and appropriate is as well. So you can use different language, okay, not okay, whatever pitch to.
Yeah, and it would be different for different people. Like, it would be okay for Lila to kiss the postman because that's her daddy.
Of course. So that's, and so that in your house would be absolutely would be
yeah.
So that postman, and I think it brings in the conversation about doctors as well, because at some point there might be having some kind of examination, but it's letting them know that the doctor's okay to do that, to touching private parts. But if your mum, dad, carer are there, but if you were going in with a sore throat and the doctor was touching private parts, and that wouldn't be appropriate. So it's bringing in all these sort of conversations, so you could add in a number of different characters to the day for that person, so they can just really understand different boundaries, and you can talk about different questions. How would they feel if you were to kiss them? Do you think would they like that? And how would you find that out? Do you need to ask for a kiss? Would you kiss the person in the shop? And it gets you in talking about different types of relationships as well. So it can be really helpful to do that.
Well, I think that's probably about as much time as anyone can give attention to at the moment. Busy parents, watching this probably won't want to sit here for hours and hours, but I hope that we've given some kind of clarity and information around respect and boundaries and body autonomy. But if anyone has any questions, please do pop them in the comments below and we'll happily answer them. I know, it can be difficult sometimes to talk about these things to our children and to other people. So we're here if you want some advice or guidance around that. And if anybody kind of wants to contact you, Katrina, how might they do that?
So I think you maybe had put a link on the page, and I can put that in the comments as well. A link to sort of my Facebook page that they can directly message with any questions or any of the resources I've talked about. I'm sure we could probably talk about another 2 hours on this, but we won't.
I think we might come back.
I've really enjoyed it.
And maybe talk about older children, maybe teenagers entering into relationships, and maybe talk about that with everyone, because that might be quite interesting. So
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you so much for chatting with me, Katrina, and
no problem.
Everyone enjoys that. Now I'm going to
thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.